Hello again, my name is Cameron MacDonald and welcome to the second episode of Whiskey Without the Guff. This episode we're going to be talking about casks and the importance of casks. And we're going to be tasting some Glenmorangie, I should say, right up at the front. If you look at the title of Glenmorangie, it's written as one word, Glenmorangie, and that would certainly be how they pronounce it in Glasgow. But if you're up in that neck of the woods, they would put a pause between the Glen and the Morangie, so they would call it Glenmorangie, even though they label it just like one word. More Scottish mysticism. Sometimes they label it as two words and they string them together, but anyway, I've called it Glenmorangie my whole life, so it's very difficult for me to do this Glenmorangie. In any event, when whiskey is distilled at first, it's clear. It's absolutely clear, like water. And it gets most of the colour from well, not most of it, it gets all of the colour from the cask or casks that it's placed in. And it gets a good deal of the flavour as well. Just how much of the flavour it gets depends on what it's in and how long it's in there. The longer it's in a barrel, it doesn't age in the bottle. Once it's bottled, whatever the point in time was, that's how it is. But in a barrel, in a cask, the longer it's in there, the more it's taken from the cask or casks, and the more mature. Generally, I mean, that leads to the whole thing about people obsessed with, oh yeah, if it's 100-year-old whiskey, it's going to be much better than a 20-year-old whiskey. So I'm going to talk about that in just a wee minute here. In fact, I'll do it now. If I take, I'll do this with the aid of a whiteboard. I love wee diagrams. So if I was to say, there's quality, whatever way you define quality, goodness in whiskey, and this is time. So what actually happens is whiskey, I think, goes like this. I'm having trouble drawing sideways here. And say this was about 20 years, and this would be 10, that would be 5. So you can see it's exponential. It goes very quickly at the beginning, and then it slows down. So takeaways from this: if you're about the 10-year period, you've got the bulk of, that versus that. You've got the bulk of how good this is ever going to be. If you go to 20 years, so let's say that was 40 years out here. I mean, it would be further out, but the difference here is marginal. It's almost non-existent. So you're not really, and it's even debatable how good it gets. I mean, one takeaway is that if you're within a 20-year period and you're, say, at least 10 years, between 10 and 20 years, you've probably got as much goodness out of that whiskey as you're going to get. If you wait longer, to me there's some doubt about this, because one, it's definitely getting rarer because it's also evaporating, and we'll talk about that in just a sec. But you're not really getting a substantial benefit in taste difference, and in fact, most of these master distillers, by the time they're old enough to become a master distiller, if they start down this path, let's say they were 50 when they become a master distiller. If they wait 40 years, they're 90 years old. So if they're still working, this is the first time they've done this. So they don't know how it's going to turn out either. They don't know whether they should pull the plug and bottle at a particular time. So it's a debatable thing. Casks started, the whole cask thing has changed, because originally it started because of cheapness. The Scots were cheap bastards, and they found out that the people making bourbon and American whiskey by law could only use the barrels once, so they were throwing these barrels out. The Scots got wind of this and thought, oh ho, let's go get some of these barrels for free. So they got these barrels for free, shipped them over there, had their coopers rebuild the barrels, scorched them, why I don't know, but they do that, and then used them. And everybody was happy. It's turned around though, so that was like an accident. They started using this not because some guy had some marvelous design about casks and what it does to whiskey, but just through cheapness. Now though, it's become quite a science. In fact, I would say today they're probably spending more time on the cask than they are on the actual whiskey. That's maybe not true, but they're spending a hell of a lot of effort and time on these casks. This particular whiskey here, which is a Bruichladdich Black Art, I think has an awful lot to do with casks. In fact, the founder of that, or the designer of that, Jim McHugh, and he won't even tell anybody how he makes it. So, and it's certainly not got to do with the distilling, I don't think. Anyway, so where are we? We've got the thing about how casks are important. So now it's become a science, and nowadays you'll actually hear them talking about, oh, this is a sherry, cask whiskey, almost like a genre of whiskies. So that's another thread that's going on. The other thing is something called the angel share. What's the angel share? Well, if this was day one and you fill this thing with whiskey on day one, this isn't solid. It evaporates out of here. So, and it evaporates at the rate of about 2% a year. Now that's Scotland. If it was warmer, it would probably be higher. So in a normal year, if it was just 2%, if we take that as a norm, what that means is in about 5 years, 10% of that's gone. In 15 years, it's a quarter of it gone. In 34 years, half of it's gone. What kind of business model is this? You invest in a thing, so there's a lot of pressure on people to sell this as quickly as they can. The distillers themselves, though, want to, make it older. So when you get an older whiskey, it's definitely rarer, but how much better it is debatable, and whether it's worth the money. I mean, if you could get a 40-year-old Macallan and it was $10,000 or $50,000, some amazing amount of money, you got to realise that for that amount of money, you could buy hundreds of bottles of a 200-year-old, you could buy about 200 bottles of a 20-year-old Macallan. So it doesn't make any economic sense to me. So, but one thing it's for sure is that as the whiskey gets older, it gets more complex. But again, they're building they've built one in Islay called Art Nouveau, a new distillery. But you can see that to create a brand new distillery now, and then wait, 5, 10, 15, 20 years before you start getting any return, you got to have a lot of money, deep pockets, or really have an interest in doing this. Now you can see why people are making gin, why they'd like to, make gin. You bottle gin today, you sell it this afternoon. So anyway, so in this thing we're going to taste Glenmorangie, the standard 10-year-old offering, and the La Santa, which is a 12-year-old. And we'll turn to that right now. You ready? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Right, so this is Kim. You met Kim in the last episode, and this is Colleen. Now, Kim has very little experience of whiskey. Colleen, sometimes you have to quarry it out of pubs. We actually visited the Glenmorangie distillery because Colleen was in Scotland and she wanted to go there. So we drove up there, and if you ever do go up there, it's up in Tain. I recommend you go into the Royal Tain Hotel because the bar in there is extraordinary. They've got this bar and it's got more scotch in it than you could ever drink. And it's a very weird bar because in this hotel they've got a backup bar. Only in Scotland would you feel the need of a backup bar. It's a bit like, I don't know if you're familiar with a kilt, you'll know you have a dagger down your sock called a ski and do, which is Gaelic for dark blade. But if you ever see the Scottish regiments, they not only have this one backup stabbing device, but they've got a belt with a scabbard, and not one, not two, but three further backup stabbing devices. So it tells you a lot about the culture, if culture's the right word here, that they feel the need of not just one odd mad stabber, but the whole damn regiment with 4 backup stabbing weapons. So there's a backup bar, but it's really good. Anyway, the Glenmorangie distillery is really good. The distiller is a guy called Dr. Bill Lumsden, who to me is a bit of a demented genius, but we'll talk a bit more about Bill Lumsden later. Anyway, we're going to sample 2 whiskies. One is this Glenmorangie Original, which is a 10-year-old, and it's about 43% alcohol by volume, and another Glenmorangie product called La Santa, which is a 12-year-old, and same alcohol. So if you would take the 10-year-old first, which is the lighter of the two, you'll notice there's a colour difference in both of these things. I don't know if you can see it against my shirt, but definitely.
I knew that right away.
So we're taking the
Well,
lighter.
you did. You've got experience of this, and then some. So just have a wee sniff at it. I like Glenmorangie 10 because I think it's a very pure, clean, nice dram.
It is. It's very clean.
So
Is that
have
what
a
you
wee-
call it, clean?
Have a wee,
It's the water that makes it good.
have a wee sip. See what you think. It's a one-eye drink, is it?
It's okay. I'll have yours too.
So, see, I said you got to quarry that at the bottom. So, oh, by the way, I've got water here as well. So this
See,
is
that would taste good with like 1 drop of water.
well. We'll try that in a minute.
Okay.
Just while I'm explaining this, why don't you have a sniff at the La Santa?
This is the one you like. Right?
Yes.
So this is a pipette. It's really
Notice the
extraordinary. If
difference?
you ever take
Yeah.
some water into a pipette and you just put even 1 drop. I mean, you wouldn't believe this if you
Makes a big
hadn't tried
difference.
it. But 1 drop of water, 2 drops, or 3 drops, it makes an extraordinary difference in the taste of the whiskey. In fact, guys like Richard Patterson, the nose, he'll put about 1/3. And some people will do a little bit, taste it, a little bit more, taste it, almost like they're peeling an onion. So do you see the difference in the La Santa? Give it a little swirl, and I can even see it on your glass from here. Give both of them a little swirl and just look and see if you see any difference in the viscosity.
My left hand's not so swirlish.
I would argue that
But I got my butterscotch taste with this.
Yeah,
Yes.
I noticed that
Yes.
too.
butterscotch.
Yeah.
Yes, butterscotch.
With
the
the
La
La
Santa.
Yeah, I noticed
Okay.
that too actually.
Well, I don't know.
I would argue that the La Santa is more oily. That doesn't
Yeah.
make it sound too good.
Little. That's true.
Than the
Can I
Yeah.
drink some more?
oh yeah, drink away. So, did you taste the
Yeah.
La Santa?
And that's where I agree. It was something a little sweeter. But yeah, now that you mentioned butterscotch.
It is. It's very good. It's very nice.
Now, can you tell the difference between the two?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So not only smell, you can.
Yeah.
And that's the first time you've done this.
Yeah.
As a
and
tasting
be
to them.
the rookie here. The
Now, do you want to try
the
a wee bit of water in
non-professional.
it?
The rookie. Yeah. I actually like that. So 1 drop first.
Well, you can add it yourself. Yeah.
With the pipette.
Yeah.
Oh, let's go 2. Okay.
Get
Do you
reckless.
want some?
I would only put it in this. Whoops, a little too much in that one.
Yeah,
See
it
if
really
see if
is something.
tastes different.
Smells different.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Did it taste better or worse?
And no good. Yeah. So for me, I like 1 or 2 drops in there.
Colleen?
It didn't taste a whole lot whole lot of difference, but I only put it in the 10-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to ruin.
Don't want
Because
to.
I don't
that's
want to
your
ruin.
drink.
That's my yeah.
There's actually in Scotland, if somebody asks you if you want some water in your whiskey, the standard reply is there's too much bloody water in it already.
Yes,
So it's
yes.
so Colleen is becoming Scottish.
This one was stronger to me. Stronger, is
Which
that
one?
the word? La Santa. So that's why I wanted.
Well,
Lots of water
the
in
funny
it.
thing about this. Okay, so let's try my experiment. Is the Lasanta compared to the Glenmorangie 10-year-old? Is the Lasanta stronger or is it smoother? It's clearly not the same.
No, I think as far as, for me, as far as taste, it's stronger, but it's sweeter because of the butterscotch.
It is yeah. I mean, to me it is too. But to me, it's smoother, much smoother. Yeah. This
I would
the
agree
10-year
with that.
has a little bit of a bite to it. Yeah.
I don't
Oh.
see a bite. Colleen and I disagree on quite a lot of
Yeah.
things like spicy and stuff like
That's
that.
right, you do.
You know, but anyway, I think we reached the same conclusion by different paths. The amazing thing, and the reason I chose these two whiskies, is that these are identical. They're identical insofar as they make this, the 10-year-old, and then they take some of it and they stick it in a sherry cask for 2 years, just 2 years, and out comes this.
Oh, that's the only difference is the sherry cask?
Yeah.
Yeah, in 2 years, so
Oh,
which
yeah.
isn't a great deal of time. So it shows you that they get an awful lot out of these casks.
Yeah.
And Bill Lumsden, and he's the guy up in Glenmorangie. He also does Ardbeg, strangely enough. And a guy like Jim McEwen on Isla are obsessed. They're very passionate. They're obsessed with casks. I mean, they go on
Well,
to the
that would
extent
make a
that
Tour,
difference.
I remember that. Yes, they were. Yeah.
I think what's his name, Lumsden. I think even have their own forests in Tennessee. I'm serious.
Yeah.
You know, American white oak.
They did.
And
yeah.
they cut it down. They make barrels and they give it to one of the bourbon guys, and they get to use it
Yeah.
once, and then
Uh-huh.
they take it over
Yeah.
to Scotland.
Yeah.
So
But it does make a huge difference.
It
yeah,
does.
you wouldn't think that.
Yeah.
No.
I mean,
They're
it's
totally
been 10
different.
years
Uh-huh.
identical, and then suddenly 2 years you get this, and if you look at that, it doesn't look the same, it doesn't smell the same, it
No.
doesn't taste the same. Now, when I'm tasting La Santa, I can taste sort of echoes of the 10-year-old. You know, it's almost like you can sense the heritage in it. But you, if somebody didn't tell you, you'd drink it quite happily and everything.
Oh yeah, that, absolutely. And then there's a rum cast one too. That's very nice.
Oh, there's quite a few, and we'll get
Yes.
to them. But for the time being, the mission here is just to see, you know, especially for Kim, who doesn't drink a lot of whiskey. I mean, you've probably had more whiskey here than
Oh,
you
yes.
had in your life. So, just to see that it actually makes a difference. So,
No, it does.
thank you both
Something.
very much indeed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're now going to move on to episode 3.
Okay.
Which is different characters.
Different characters and different whiskies.
Nice. Those are
Thank
all
you.
the Ardbeg ones.
You're welcome.
I'm going to go up to the camera like Dasha told me, and that's a cut.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So,
Okay. So are you going to drink this?
No.
Okay. There we go.
so in summary, we should perhaps have titled that episode "What a Difference a Cask Makes," because it does, and hopefully you've seen that. We tasted 2 whiskies, Glenmorangie 10, which is their sort of standard offering, and the La Santa. And I chose those deliberately because they're basically the same thing. If I had chosen to show the difference a cask makes, 2 different whiskies from the same distillery, you could argue that, well, what does that prove? They're made different ways and everything. But this is basically the same stuff. And even on the camera, you can see that the La Santa is darker than the 10. If you were to smell it, you can definitely tell a big difference in the nose here. The La Santa is obviously sweeter. It's sweeter, same alcohol by volume, but fundamentally different whiskies. They look different, they taste different, they smell different. So this is really a good experiment here, and it's good homework too. I'll get to that in a minute. We also covered adding water, and I would urge you to try this. As I've said, I don't like adding water to my whiskey, but I do know that if you add a little water, the smell's different, the taste is different. It's extraordinary. You wouldn't believe it. Just add drip. So get yourself a pipette or an eyedropper or something rather than splashing water in, because you want to be able to control this. What else do I want to say about this? So we covered casks. Casks, I think, are becoming a big part of whiskey making, and basically these guys are they're creating new products here. Right now, as we mentioned, you've got the sherry cask genre going on, but they're trying this with all kinds of different things, and I think this trend's going to continue. They're inventing a different product, and that is not something that's going to go away. It's not saying that they're not spending time distilling things as well as they can, but that's only the beginning, where before a barrel was just something that you put the whiskey in. And barrels are obviously watertight, otherwise whiskey would be leaking out all over the place, but they're not airtight. So as we covered in the Angel Share, those things continue to evaporate over time. And the longer the time and the warmer the weather, the more you're going to get evaporating. However, you should also understand it's a two-way process. Otherwise, there'd be a vacuum created in this barrel. As stuff is leaking out, other stuff is leaking in. So this may be why you get such a pronounced difference in whiskies. For instance, if you were in Islay, Islay has very few trees, very strong winds, bad kind of winters, Atlantic gales blowing in there. So you've got this salt spray pounding everything. On the other hand, if you were in some of the Speyside places or some of the lowland or highland places, you have these nice little valleys, and in summer you've got a lot of wee wildflowers, and it's quite warm and quite passive, and bees buzzing and all this sort of sort of summer's day kind of theme. So the air that's leaking into a barrel is going to be quite different for the most part on Islay than it is from some of these protected little valleys. So this is like alchemy. This is not like science. This is like alchemy. And we talked about age. As a conclusion on age, if you're filthy rich, drink anything you like. If you are a normal person, you should realise that if you're buying something, from sort of nominally 10 to 20 years old, and this isn't a hard and fast rule, you're probably getting as good as the distilleries can offer, and the closer to 20, the better, probably. But going from 20 to 60, I'm pretty sure that the whiskey will be more refined and, smoother, intricate. But is it going to be hugely different? It's a wee bit like, people my age. When I grew up, they had this hi-fi thing going on, and people were doing all these weird things to get the perfect sound. Well, beyond a certain point, your hearing doesn't work as well as it did when you were 6 or 16 or something. So the same thing applies to this whiskey, I think. It's sort of, not that your taste goes down the tubes, but your level of appreciation probably goes down the tubes a bit. So I think you have to be very careful with this age thing, unless, as I say, you're filthy rich. I used to think you shouldn't go over 30. 30 was my limit in terms of 30 years old, in terms of how much you'd be normally prepared to pay for whiskey. Then it moved down to about 25, which is where it is just now. But even at that, you're really stretching it. Some of these things are like going in price, like $300-400 a bottle. that's pushing it. You really got to want to try this to buy. I mean, it would be different if some of the other whiskies were no damn good and you had to go there because that's where the tasting became. But as you'll see in the next episode, you don't have to go way up high necessarily to get a good quality drink. So, again, thank you for listening, and if you would like to hit the like button and the subscribe button, we'd be eternally in your debt. It'll keep us active, and also it shows us that somebody's actually listening to this. And I'd love to hear your comments and some participation, particularly when you've done the homework. So the homework is go out to your pub with your group and order up some Glenmorangie 10 and Glenmorangie La Santa and do what we did. I mean, you can see the difference in colour. You can't smell it on the camera, but when you smell it, you'll see a radical difference. And when you taste it, you'll taste a radical difference. And I think this is a great piece of homework, as I said earlier, because neither of these is horribly expensive. And they're readily available. So it's an easy test to do. And I think you'll really enjoy it. And the other part of this is just to show again that anybody can tell the difference in whiskey. And you can tell the difference in whiskey, so get out there and drink. The next episode we're going to do is we're moving from one end of the spectrum to another. This is a beautiful, nice, clean dram. We're now moving to the smoky side of the world on Islay. So we're going to Ardbeg. And we're going to taste something called the Wee Beastie. We're also going to show you how you should conduct a tasting. I mean, as opposed to how you see it on the other websites where they have a single bottle and they do this absolute analysis and dissection. Rubbish, guff. Anyway, so we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you very much.